All righty, it's 8:32, so let's get going. This morning, we are delighted to have a very special speaker with us, John Israel. And thank you for joining us, John. It's a pleasure having you here. Um, I don't personally know John, but I have the pleasure of introducing him. So I know that John is going to talk with us today about um, our business, as we know, being a very relational business. And it's great to be able to master relationships in business and, for that matter, personally as well. So we're delighted to have John on the call. He has been featured on Fox and Good Morning America and so many different places, John. So I just want to say welcome. John's going to share with us about how to create loyalty with our clients, generate true connections, and have raving fans. So with that, John, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. And actually, Eric, I'm going to let Eric tee a couple things up because I know he had a few things to say before we get started. So, but thank you for the introduction. We'll get started here in a second.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, John. And I am the bridge. I do know a lot about John, and I have the honor of knowing John for over 12 years. And he's been one of the most impactful people in my entire life. So I'll tell you a bit about him in just a second. For those of you I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, personally, I am Eric Gilman, the sharpest guy that you know, a.k.a. the knife guy. For those of you who are wondering why there is a knife guy on your real estate meeting right now, we've simply been using a product called Cutco to appreciate clients forever. So we'll talk more about it at the end, but basically we wave your hands in the air like you just don't care if you've got some Cutco knives at home. Most people, yep. So they're all high quality, American made, and we work with Mary Beth Cayley. She's already showing off her knives. Amber Tannehill, Anthony, and Kathy Gabrielson. Just on the list goes on and on. And the reason they use Cutco to appreciate your clients, which appreciation is the topic today, is they're custom engraved with all their name, their info, everything on the blade. As y'all know, people are home more than ever right now, so they're using knives more than ever. And there's never a better day to appreciate your clients than today. So I'm gonna let John, get into it in just a second here. I'm gonna wrap up, so make sure you stay towards the end of the call. I'm actually gonna be offering an opportunity to get a handful of John's books at no cost to you. My goal today is to give away 100 copies of John's book. So I'm going to tell you how you can get your own copies. I have 100 copies ready to go. This is over 200 people on this call. So this is the biggest Zoom meeting I've ever been a part of. Shout out Coldwell Banker West. Y'all are a powerhouse all over California. You're incredible. But without further ado, let's talk about the reason we're here today. I've been with Cutco for 13 years, selling knives, changing lives. And I'm a Cutco Hall of Fame member. And one of the reasons why is about 2 years into my journey in this job, I sat through a message from this guy you're about to hear today. And one of my biggest takeaways at that time was John had told me that you're always moving closer to or further away from a goal. Now, I know he didn't make that up himself, but I heard that from John for the first time, and it impacted the trajectory of my entire life. And I hope that today, by bringing him here to you, that maybe just one thing he says changes the trajectory of your entire life. And not just your life, but what you're going to find from John's message is that you'll have the ability to change the trajectory of other people's lives and increase the level of gratitude in the world. So make sure you stick around to the very end to get copies of John's book. I'll tell you about how we're going to do that. But without further ado, let me tell you just a little bit about this incredible human you're about to hear from. John is the founder and chief gratitude officer of Mr. Thank You, a consulting firm focused on client and employee retention. He's one of the most sought after speakers and trainers who teaches companies, both big and small, how to become irreplaceable by creating thriving, profitable relationships, both inside and outside the organization. In 2016, he started a personal social experiment around human connection that became known worldwide, a book and a TEDx talk titled the Mr. Thank You Project. John's Mr. Thank You project has been featured on ABC, Fox News, Good Morning America, and his clients include brands such as Square, Remax, Fairway Mortgage, Salesforce, and the list goes on and on.
And Coldwell Banker. Let's not.
Coldwell Banker.
Coldwell
Yes.
Banker in there.
Good one, John.
Good, nice. Coldwell
We're
Banker.
gonna update that every time before I start. Oh, well, yeah. Coldwell Banker.
Love it. John's goal is to rehumanize the workplace and marketplace by teaching people how to express authentic gratitude, respect, and appreciation. He lives in Plano, Texas, with his wife,
Kelly.
3 children, and loyal Chihuahua. Today, John is going to share with us today how to make connections that increase loyalty. Thank you, John, and I will give you the floor. I appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for the awesome introduction. And thank you to everyone for being here today. Especially appreciate Eric for kind of hosting this and putting this together. Eric's a big fan and proponent of Mr. Thank You. He's bought lots of my books and given them out. We've built a really great relationship. And like any great relationship that you build, you can do pretty cool things with it. And what's great is that, typically I'm going to be traveling the country, speaking at conferences and meetings, and, that's all but disappeared. And what I love is just connecting with Eric, and we just started creating this partnership about how can we still bring this message out to the world. And so I said, hey, well, why don't you just go and pick your 2 favorite brokerages you work with, and I'll just go and deliver a free keynote just to kind of love on your people who you care about, because he's been so great to me, and kind of expanding our business out in the real estate world. So really appreciate Eric for kind of putting this together. And I really appreciate you guys for being here too, right? Because ultimately, you could be anywhere else right now, right? Like you really could. You could be out showing properties. You could be, getting some donuts. You could be doing anything, right? Working on some deals. And you might even be doing that right now. And if I could steer your attention away from that, my intention is that you get some value from today. And I want to begin by just kind of sharing like this. I love, I speak a lot on gratitude and connection. And one of the definitions, the best definition I heard of the word gratitude is it's the emotion one feels when you receive a gift or experience something as a gift. And what I love about that definition is that, number one, it makes sense, right? So when you receive a gift, especially you're unexpected, maybe a Cutco knife, who knows? But when you get a gift, you feel grateful, you feel good. But there's also this component of when you experience something as a gift. And what's really cool about being here with you today is, while the pandemic that we're all experiencing, right? Whether you're in real estate, title, mortgage, we've all been impacted by this event. And if we take that, and while it's limiting a lot of the things that we can do, when you look at the experience of being able to look at something and experience it as a gift, find the gift in what's going on, you can actually feel gratitude when you would normally be upset. And that's I like to lead with that, because to be totally frank, we probably wouldn't be doing this today if we weren't in the middle of the pandemic. I don't know if we would have been able to work this out, to be able to fly out to Southern California to do this keynote, but it is what it is, and we're making the best of this situation. And my commitment to you guys is that today's really valuable to you. We're going to talk about loyalty, right? And what are the components that go into loyal relationships? We're going to talk about connection. I'm going to share with you guys a framework that I teach to salespeople all over the country and North America, US and Canada, about how to make meaningful connections with virtually anybody, a client, a prospect, a complete stranger, doesn't matter what ethnicity or where they're from, how to really make a true connection with anybody. And we're also going to talk about community, right? And what is it that we can do to really build a community and use our business to be a vehicle to cause and create change in the world. So if you guys are game for that, let's get started. So a fun story, Eric didn't mention this, but I'm actually from Southern California. I'm from San Diego originally. So I was born and raised in a small town called Lakeside. If any of you guys know where Lakeside is, that was my hood. And I'm going to use that word to describe it. That was my spot. I grew up as a kid. And what's really funny is, my start in business actually began working with Cutco knives as a 19-year-old college student, going house to house selling Cutco. And what's really funny about that story is I didn't get into selling knives because I loved cooking or because I loved marketing or business. My degree in college is kinesiology. So for all intents and purposes, I should have become a chiropractor or a physical therapist. That's what I was going towards. But I needed to pay for school. And like getting into real estate or any division of sales, most people don't walk into sales because they're like, I want to be a salesman. They do so because they see there's a financial opportunity and a big win that you can have. And so for me, all I wanted to do was to be able to pay for school. So I was willing to work as hard as possible. And some of you guys know what Cutco knives are. And so they hire a lot of college kids to go house to house and sell the product. And I remember my first summer when I was 19 years old. This is like my first real job. I went to go see a client up in Escondido, California. Her name was Cynthia. Cynthia was a really wonderful woman. She was referred to me as a friend of a friend. And I go over to Cynthia's house, and I get to learn a lot about Cynthia. So she tells me about her family, right? So she's a single mom. She was a nurse at Palomar. She also just was a single mom, and she talked about how hard it was raising her boys, but also she was at a really unique stage of life where she was super proud of them because they had graduated college and they were moving on to start their own lives and moving out of the house. And, you know, how did I know these things? Because I learned what many of us learn in the beginnings of sales, which is to build rapport, to ask questions and develop conversations to get to know people better. And by the end of that presentation, we had a pretty good time, and Cynthia places a modest order of Cutco knives, which was cool. Now, a day later, something unexpected happened, and I get a phone call, and it's from Cynthia, and she's very frantic. And she says, John, this is Cynthia. I hate to do this, but I need you to cancel my order. Now, have you ever gotten that call before from a client, from a buyer who's maybe getting cold feet about their offer, or the client who's putting their house in the market that maybe they're changing their mind because it's been in the family for so long? We've all had that call where somebody changes their mind. How does that feel? Well, I can tell you how I felt back then when I was 19 years old, which was like, I was upset, right? I was pretty angry. And I was also really confused. And I remember thinking, like, you know, is there anything that I did? Like, is there anything that I said? Like, what can I do? And I even asked her that. I said, is there anything I can do to help you, like, keep your order? And she says, I can't talk about it. I just need to know that you can cancel my order. And I said, okay, I'll figure it out. So I call Cutco, cancel her order. And then I'm just in a funk for the rest of the day. And I just feel awful. I come home, and my mom is there. My mom has a background in sales, and she also has a background in being a mom. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, right? So she's done her duty, and she could tell something's wrong. And so she says, what's wrong, sweetheart? And I say, Mom, you won't believe this. This lady bought some knives, and then she called me up today and canceled her order. And while I can see some of you guys kind of smirking a little bit, it's like, hey, dude, it's just a couple of knives, like, not a big deal. The world's not going to end. But to me, it literally felt like the world was going to end. And she said, well, you know, have you ever had someone who, you know, you did a presentation for that didn't buy? I said, yeah, that's happened several times. She says, well, why can't you just think of this experience like that one? I thought about it, and what I came back to her with is, and I said, you know, I'm not upset that I lost the sale. I'm actually upset that I lost the relationship. You know, it was this connection that I had with this other person that it's like I made this friend of a customer that suddenly I didn't get to be friends with anymore. And I was actually really sad about that. And she says, well, why don't you tell her? I was like, tell her? How would I tell her that? And she says, well, why don't you write her a thank you card? And I was like, Mom, that is what do I have to be grateful for of this woman? She just canceled her order. I mean, that's a ridiculous idea. And she says, well, listen, you're pretty upset right now. And you can be upset or you can be grateful, but you cannot be both at the same time. If she had like a mic, she could have dropped it right there, right? But it was just that moment, like, Mom just has that truth and she just cuts right to you. And I was like, all right, you're right. So I grabbed some stationery out of her desk and I sit down, and I had to sit there for a while to really think about what can I be grateful for of this person. And this is the letter that came out. And I said, Dear Cynthia, I just wanted to reach out to say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for letting me into your house and giving me the opportunity to demonstrate Cutco knives to you. And I also just want to say thank you so much for sharing with me about your life and your family and about your boys and how proud of them you are and what it was like to be a single mom raising them on your own. While I know that now is not the time for you to be buying any Cutco, I just wanted to let you know I really enjoyed meeting you as a person. If there's anything I can do for you in the future, here's my cell phone number. Sincerely, John Israel. So I write this letter and I fold it up and I mail it off. 2 things happen. One, almost instantly, I feel better, right? It's like this weight, this anger that I was holding on to, like went away the moment I dropped the letter in the mail. The second thing that happened was actually 2 years later. So I'm actually in my college dorm room. I was going to Gonzaga University in Washington State. And I was there, I was going into my junior year. And it was right around Christmas time. And then I get this phone call out of nowhere. And I pick it up, and there's just this super excited woman on the other line. And she says, "Hey, is this John Israel, the Cutco guy?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is John Israel, the Cutco guy. Like, who is this? How can I help you?" She's like, "Well, you might not remember me, but my name is Cynthia. And I tried to buy some knives from you several years ago, but I had to cancel my order, and I'm ready to buy now. And I was wondering if you can help me." I was like, "Oh my gosh, of course, Cynthia, I remember you. Yeah, what do you want?" So she starts listing out everything that she wants, and she keeps going and going and going. This is about to be one of the largest orders of my entire career. And I'm stunned, sitting in my chair, and we finish everything up, and Cynthia says, "John, do you know I am calling you right now?" And I said, "I have no idea." She says, "Well, all those years ago when I had to cancel my order, what I couldn't tell you is that I had just found out that I was extremely sick. I was actually so sick that I had to leave my job. I was so sick that my kids who'd moved out of the house had to move back in with me to take care of me while I went through treatment. And what the last thing I wanted to do was to cancel my order. I just had to. And then when I got your letter in the mail, what I saw was you valued me as a human being more than just a customer. And I told myself, when I get healthy one day, I'm going to call this kid and I'm going to buy every damn knife he's selling." And that's what happened. What a lesson to learn as a 21-year-old, right? To learn to value people over profit. And I'm sure all of you probably have somewhat of a similar story where maybe you were on the other side or either one of the sides of that experience of what it was like to be connected with someone who actually cared about you and your best interest, not just the sale. And when you think about how you view that salesperson, how you view that relationship, I mean, it's crazy. Think about that. I was a 19-year-old kid who tried to sell this woman some knives, and she sought me out 2 years later. Why is that? And it's because we had a connection. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is how to create more meaningful connections in your life and in your business. Now, in the process of doing this, I'm going to share with you guys a story. And this is a story of a personal social experiment. Eric mentioned this, that at the time was called the Year of Thank You, and it became known as the Mr. Thank You Project. And it was just this time in my life, many years after meeting Cynthia, that I just decided to make gratitude a habit. And I just decided, like, hey, what might it be like if I was just really intentional about saying thank you and appreciating people? And as I share with you this story, I don't want you to look at this from the lens of, like, wow, what a good guy John is. Like, good for him. I'm glad he's on this call today. Glad people like him exist. This is about you. This is about your life and your business and your career. Because having been a salesperson for a majority of my life, and I consider myself a salesperson now, we're always selling all the time. Selling is really just helping people make decisions with their life. And the way that we can be more effective in that is by having better quality connections with people. And, I speak a lot in real estate, and one of the really common topics that's going out is Zillow, and the iBuyer market's really hot, especially here in Dallas right now. And it's causing some turmoil. And so what I'm here to say to begin with is that you're not going to beat technology companies with technology, but you will beat them by learning to be more human. You will be able to beat them by learning how to make more powerful connections that activate loyalty, that create community, and that ultimately really make a difference in the world. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So to fast forward a little bit to 2016, so I was living in Southern California at the time. I was actually up in Ventura County, California. That's where my wife was. So we met after college. We got married, started our family. And I was in this really unique phase of life where I was actually a Cutco closing gift sales rep at the time, just like Eric, and I was taking care of the Central Coast of California. And so I always joke that I was a gratitude salesman, right? So I help people say thank you for a living. And it was it's a really great company and brand and product. And of course, obviously, I got to give props to Eric. So if you guys don't use Cutco, it's a really great thing to use for your closings. But in 2016, I was this gratitude salesman who was no longer grateful for his job. The irony, right? And what was going on was life had just changed very drastically. We had our first child. We bought our first house. My wife left her job to be a stay-at-home mom. We simultaneously found out we were pregnant with our second child. And then I get a job offer to move from Southern California to Dallas, Texas. All of that happened in a matter of months. So you can imagine what life was like. I mean, it was crazy. And I was really just this salesperson who was trying to find more purpose in his work. And so I had a coach at the time, and I went through a training, like weekend seminar type thing. And we were really working on our vision. Like, what is our vision for why we do what we do? And I came up with this idea that our vision as a business was that we were all about elevating gratitude on the planet. And it sounded awesome, right? And like, it looked better when we like printed it out and plastered it on the wall, but there's a problem. And that problem lays inside of a quote, and it's one of those quotes that once you hear it, you don't get to unhear it. And it's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he says, "Excuse me, I cannot hear what you are saying because who you are speaks so loudly." And the reason why that quote really hit me was because you could go out and ask 100 people who know John Israel, like, what do you know about this guy? And they would say probably some nice things, right? Driven, successful, but I don't think they would use the word grateful or appreciative or probably even happy to describe who I was. So I thought, well, you know, if this guy, Ralph Waldo Emerson, is right, how can I be this guy who says he's all about elevating gratitude on the planet, but yet I don't embody it in my life? And so I really spent some time thinking about that. And I was also reading a book at the time called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, really great book. And Charles has this concept about how to create good habits, of this concept called a keystone habit. And a keystone habit is a habit that you have that has a trickle-down positive effect in multiple areas of your life. So the example he gives is working out, right? So when we work out, number one, that's a good habit, right? We're getting healthier because we're doing that. We feel better. Well, also because you're working out, we are more thirsty, so we drink more water. Well, it turns out water is actually a pretty good habit to be drinking regularly. Third, because you're working out, your body gets more fatigued, so you actually sleep better at night. So there's all these positive trickle-down effects from this one singular habit called working out. And I thought, well, that's interesting, but how can I apply that to gratitude? And I thought back to that experience with Cynthia. And I thought, well, what about that time when I wrote that letter to that woman and how impactful that was? What if that's what I did? What if I made some habit around writing thank you cards every single day? And so I sat down with my coach and I said, hey, I've got this idea about thank you cards for a whole year. Like, let's flesh this thing out. And so we developed the rules and guidelines of what became known as the Mr. Thank You Project. So I'm going to share what those are with you guys today. So let me see if I can get some screen share action here. Perfect. So I'm going to share with you guys, there were 4 rules of the Mr. Thank You Project. So rule number 1 was I made a commitment to handwrite 5 thank you cards every day for 365 days in a row. The cards had to be handwritten. It wasn't going to be an email or a text. Had to be a handwritten thank you card. Second rule, every day resets at 0. So this means I couldn't write 35 thank you cards on Sunday. That might have gotten really annoying to my wife. Why can't you come to church? You're writing thank you cards to people. Okay, that's weird. So also, I wanted this to be something that got me into a grateful state every single day. So I wanted it to be a daily habit. Third rule is I could write a max of 3 thank you cards per one person. So this means I couldn't write 75 thank you cards to my mom, although she might have deserved it. I just thought that also if you write that many cards to a single person, they might lose their value. And I also know myself, and I'm a good salesperson, and I'll sell myself into or out of any situation. And I knew if I was running low on who I wanted to write a card to, I might just write another card to the same person or same couple of people over and over again. So that's why I put this rule of I could write a max of 3 cards per person. The fourth and final rule was really interesting. And my coach said, hey, John, this sounds like a really interesting project, but where's the accountability, right? Like what happens if you miss a day? And I thought about that and I said, okay, for any and every day I miss, I'll donate $100 to charity. I feel pretty good about that. And he responds, add a 0. I said, oh, hang on a second. You want me to donate $1,000 for not writing 5 thank you cards in a single day? Like, that's crazy. He's like, well, I don't want you to have to donate any money, but let me ask you this. How likely is it that you're probably going to donate $100 or several $100s to some charity throughout the year? I was like, yeah, we kind of do that regularly with our tithing and charities and stuff. He's like, okay, then you're giving yourself a way out. If what's at stake every day is $1,000, how many days will you miss? What do you think I said? What would you say? 0. I mean, there's no way I'm going to miss a single day if $1,000 is at stake every single day. So then he says, well, then what would you like to do? So rule number 4 was $1,000 to charity for any and every single day that I missed writing my 5 thank you cards. And if you do the math, 5 thank you cards times 365 days is 1,825 letters of appreciation. You don't need to know everything that happened to know that when you make any level of commitment like that in your life, you're going to experience change. You're going to have things that happen to you that will cause you to look at life different. How you approach your day, your interactions with people, it's going to change everything. And it was a life-changing year. So, spoiler alert though, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm not going to ask you to do this because it was super duper hard. Like it was really ridiculously challenging. And I'm not going to tell you every story what happened during that year. But the hope and purpose of doing this and even going through this project after the fact was really not to glorify John Israel, but to really inspire people to say, hey, if he did something like this, maybe I could do something smaller. Maybe I could write 1 card a day or 3 cards a day. Some of you guys are like, hey man, he's already speaking my language. I already, I'm a Brian Buffini person, right? I love writing thank you cards all the time. Well, my hope is that whoever you are, however you view expressing gratitude authentically to people, that you come away with some insights and ideas on how to do it in a more meaningful, impactful way that really influences your business. So you guys want to hear what happened? Kind of a crazy year. So I want to start off with day 3. Okay, so day 3 was a really crazy day, very memorable day for me. So I'm going to exit out of the screen here so you guys can see me a little better. So at this time, I was actually still living in Southern California. We were in escrow on our house in Texas. And so I was actually flying from Los Angeles, from LAX to Philadelphia for something called the Front Row Dads Retreat. Okay, so the Front Row Dads is a community that I'm involved in of entrepreneurial men. And we get together twice a year to talk about how to become better husbands to our wives and fathers to our children while we run successful businesses. And so this is our first time getting together. And so we were really excited about this event. So I'm boarding this plane in Los Angeles. And an interesting question comes up, people often ask, is they say, hey, John, this sounds like a pretty cool idea, but who do you write these cards to? Right? Like, I don't even know 1,825 people that I would write a letter to. And what I would tell you is that what's interesting is that what you would learn when you make gratitude a habit and you make it an intentional practice to be looking for people to appreciate, you actually become a good finder. You become somebody who's looking for people doing something right when that's not our default mechanism. So as human beings, we have this thing called a negative bias. And a negative bias is when we are prone to notice what's wrong before we notice what's right. And this is actually baked into our DNA when we were cavemen and cavewomen. When we would, be out in the bushes and we would hear a growl, we would not walk over there and like, oh, is that a cute little kitty cat? We would run the other way and we would live to see another day, right? So we did so out of a survival mechanism. We would notice what's wrong before we notice what's right. So we still have that in our genes, in our DNA today. Well, let me ask you this. How is that impacting your life? How might that be impacting your relationships or your friendships or your business? And it's a really interesting thing when you make gratitude a habit, is that you become somebody who is actually actively looking for people doing something right. So as I board the plane, the first people I think about are the pilots. I mean, think about it. You know, I fly all the time, and I always pray for safe travel when we take off. And you know what? They've always delivered 100% of the time, right? So I can appreciate that. But I thought, man, I've never formally thanked the pilots on my plane. That's what I'm going to do today. So I board the plane, and I ask the flight attendant for the pilots' names, which I very quickly learn is a strange question. She's never been asked this before, so she looks at me like really confused, and she gives me the names, and I sit down. I was like, all right, that was a little more awkward than I thought, but okay, let's get started. So then I have another problem, which is I don't know these people. We've never met. How do you thank somebody that you don't even know, that you've never actually met? And what I loved about this project was I love learning where language comes from. And the word appreciate comes from the Latin word appreciare, which literally translates to appraise or to set the value of a thing, right? So when we think about that, right, I'm talking to a big group of real estate professionals. What is an appraisal, right? It's a pivotal part of your job. And what is it? It's where there's a person who comes to a property and they've got this clipboard and they've got all these questions that they ask. Right? And they say, well, when was this made? What are the conditions of the roof and the walls? Is there any termite damage? What are the comps for other properties in the area? And they go through all these questions and they hand you a sheet of paper that says, I deem this property to be worth X dollars. Well, now how do you apply that to a human being? And what I learned on that plane flight is that you just become curious and you ask for yourself questions like, well, what is this person's life like? You know, what do they really care about? What matters to them? And as I sat there, I realized that there was actually a framework that was coming up, like of how to understand people, to start to see their frame of the world and really how to make a connection. And this is what we call the VOW framework of connection. So I'm going to pop my slides back up here. So these are the questions to ask in order to learn how to make a connection with virtually anybody that you meet. So VOW, V-O-W, is an acronym. So V-O-W, V stands for values, right? What do they care about? What matters to them? You know, and it's interesting when you think about people that you're really connected to. It's most common that you have a shared value, right? It could be because you're in the same real estate brokerage, right? You share that common value of being on the same team. Could be if you went to a certain university, right? If you went to San Diego State and you see someone else wearing an Aztecs hat and you're like, oh, you went to San Diego State, so did I, when did you graduate, right? And you're instantly best friends with this complete stranger because you have a shared value. So when we meet people, it's easy to start assuming who they might be, but what if we took our time to ask, what is this person's life like? What do they really care about? What really matters to them? You'd be shocked at how you know how to connect them much better by knowing what this person cares about. The second piece, the O, is for outcomes. Another way of saying outcomes are goals, right? How do they win? What are their goals? What is it that they want out of this transaction? Why are they selling their house? Not just the first time, but ask that question 2 or 3 times to get the real why of what it is that they're doing and why they're doing what they do. And again, if we back this up and I say, hey, look at who you're most connected with, who you really appreciate and value in your life. A lot of times when I ask that question, people come up with a mentor or a coach or somebody who in their life like really supported them and helped them along the pathway of achieving a goal. You know, when you think of in your business, who you care about and appreciate the most, it's your referral partners. It's the ones who support the transactions and give you more transactions. We care about those that help us achieve our goals. So as you're meeting people, it's imperative that if we want to make a meaningful connection, to not just have small talk, but to really be curious about like, so what are you working on right now? Why is that important to you? And then we can make mind notes of these things. So if there's opportunities to support them and help them on that journey of achieving their goal, we can actually do so. And the third piece is W, which stands for weakness. Where does it hurt? What are their biggest fears or concerns? In real estate, that's a really important question to ask that I think a lot of people neglect to ask their clients, right? What's the biggest concern you have about selling your home right now? Have you ever sold your home in the past? What was great about that? What was the hardest thing about that you really didn't like? And to know these things, it's really interesting how it allows us to interact with them by knowing what their pain points are. And what's even more fascinating is I did some research. I do a lot of very unofficial research on my Facebook. So if we're not friends on Facebook, you can find me on there. I think I hit the friend max, but you can follow and you'll see I like to post lots of questions out to the world. And I asked a simple question, which was, how do you know somebody is a good friend? And you know what the number one answer was? How somebody showed up during a moment of weakness. When my husband got sick and people showed up and helped out, or when I lost my job and people helped out and brought meals or gave, the church got together and donated money to help us through that time, right? Or some type of trauma or challenging event. I'm out here in Texas. I have some great clients who sell real estate down in the Houston area. We had a huge hurricane that came through a couple of years ago. And I talked to some clients out there and they were like, oh, devastated. It ruined real estate for 6 months to a year. And she's like, but we've never been more connected as a community. How relevant is that for right now in our world that we're living in? How connected are you with your clients? Just reaching out, having conversations, not just like, hey, do you need to buy or sell your home? But hey, how are you doing? How's your husband? How's your job? Did you guys get affected by this? Are you guys okay? Is there anything I can do? Is there any connections I can make? Do you want me to connect you with my lender who can talk to you about a refinance? Is there anything that I can do to help you out? And when we value those people who are looking out for us more than any other relationship. So this is the VOW framework of human connection. So I'm thinking these things, I'm on the plane, and this is the letter that comes out for the pilots. And I said, dear pilot, I know it might seem strange to receive a thank you card from a passenger, but as I boarded this plane, I realized how much I miss my family. And then I realized this is what you do every day for your job. I can't imagine how many birthdays, special events, or celebrations you sacrificed for your work. Not to mention the hundreds, if not thousands of hours you spent in the cockpit training and preparing for your job, because nobody becomes a pilot by accident. All of that to have some bad weather and a slightly bumpy landing and then have people complain about it. So whether you hear it enough or not, I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and everybody on this plane. Sincerely, John Israel. And I write 2 of these letters, right? There's 2 pilots on the plane. I fold them up and we land in the next destination. They're still typically in the cockpit. So this time I got to hand them their cards as I exited the plane. I was actually jumping on another plane because it was 2 legs to get all the way to the East Coast. So I got to do this again for another set of pilots. So I got to give 4 of these types of cards to 4 different pilots. So it's really interesting because number one, I don't normally do this, but I only had my business stationery with me at the time, which had my name, my cell phone number, and my email printed on the card. And this is what got crazy. Within 24 hours of landing in Philadelphia, 3 out of those 4 pilots personally contacted me to say thank you for the card that they received. One went on to say, you know what, John, in my 12 years of flying, I have never received a thank you card from a passenger. And I thought, that's crazy. How is that even possible? These guys were such a big, significant, important job, and no one's even taken the time just to say thank you to them? I mean, gosh, if that's the case for these people, what about everybody else in their jobs, right? In their roles, in their companies, in their relationships, in their marriages? I thought there's a real appreciation deficit here. So we land in Philadelphia and we start the first day at the Front Row Dads Retreat. And we had a great time. So it's about 30 of us entrepreneurial guys there. And we finished the first day and we decided, hey, let's go find a restaurant to get together in fellowship so we can get to know each other a little better. Most of us had met for the first time. So 30 dudes, just picture that, 30 dudes walking through inner city downtown Philadelphia, right? Like it was a sight to see. We find this little hole in the wall restaurant. We walk in and there was one waitress working that night. And she didn't have to say anything. You could tell how she was feeling by the look on her face, which was basically, y'all just ruined my night, right? Like, we were going to keep her there all night and she was probably hoping to go home early and see her kids. But anyways, we were going to keep her there all night. So her name was Shantae. Shantae comes and greets us. She gives us a back room, private room, so we don't annoy all the other regular patrons. And we go on to have a really great night. And what was really interesting was there was a moment for Shantae where you could tell she was annoyed. right? Understandably, we had no reservation. We just showed up and took over half of the restaurant. But there was a moment where she was like, I can make this terrible or I can make this fun. Let's make this a great night. And she just like turned it on and just did a fantastic job. She got all of our food orders by herself, all of our drink orders by herself. And she just did this amazing job as a server. And so by the end of the night, I was like, all right, she's my number 5. She's my 5th and final card for the day. So I pull out some stationery, which I have with me at all times at that point. And this is the letter that I wrote to Shantae. And I said, Dear Shantae, I know it might seem strange to receive a thank you card from a patron, but I just wanted to let you know how great of a job you did tonight. What you don't realize is we are a group of entrepreneurial men here for an event to learn how to become better husbands to our wives and fathers to our children while we run successful businesses. And tonight was really important because it was all about fellowship, and you facilitated it masterfully. We realized that we had no reservation and you could have turned us away. You could have even given us terrible service and we would have understood, but you didn't. Instead, you were great, you were gracious, and you helped make tonight amazing. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and everybody in our group. Sincerely, John and the Front Row Dads. So I write this letter, and Shantae's kind of in the corner cashing out her tips for the night. So I walk over and I hand her her card, and she accepts it awkwardly, as most strangers do when I hand them a thank you card. So I walk away and I go to the restroom. So we had a long walk back to the hotel. So I wanted to go to the restroom. As I come out, Shantae is standing there waiting for me with like this big grin on her face. And she just opens her arms and she runs at me and gives me the biggest bear hug of my life and says, that is the best tip that I've ever been given. And then she sets me down. It was a big hug. And we just stood there and looked at each other for, it might've been 5 seconds, but it felt like 5 minutes. And it wasn't customer or server. It was just human being having a connection. And it was a really powerful moment. And I left the restaurant and I was obviously very fulfilled with joy, love, happiness. I mean, all those positive emotions, right? But I was also really confused because we actually gave her a massive tip, right? Like, think about that. 30 entrepreneurial men out of a conference, high on life. Like, we were playing pretty generously that night. We gave her a huge tip, yet she has this stack of money and this little piece of paper with some words on it and says, no, this is the best tip that I've ever been given. How is that possible? And what you would learn, and it took me a while to really get this, is that you understand what human beings really want out of life, out of their relationships. And it's a need that people won't ever tell you that they need. But if you can provide it for them, it'll change your relationship. And all we want to know is that we matter. We just want to know that we actually have a place in this world, that the world is actually better because we're here than if we weren't here, right? And again, just considering all those things we talked about, the negative bias, like always noting what's wrong. Well, how easy is it to know what's going wrong with ourselves and to always be looking at our own faults and what's wrong with us and everything. But what about when someone shows up with like a glimmer of hope and some positive words of affirmation? How does that make us feel? To acknowledge us for our value, not just our weakness. And this is the takeaway, which is if you want to make more meaningful connections, this is the pathway. Curiosity is a precursor to appreciation, and appreciation is the birthplace of empathy. And with empathy, you develop compassion. And when we have compassion, we have the ability to connect with anyone. Think about that. Think about people, like Mother Teresa. Like, I love looking at her example. Why was she able to impact as many people as she did for as long as she did? Because she had compassion. She didn't care who people were, what they had or didn't have. She was just there to love people. I know in business that can be really difficult because we have to provide for our families and produce transactions and make sales. But what if we just could sacrifice a little bit of productivity for a little bit of joy? Would it be worth it? So That was day 3. You can imagine 362 more days of this, right? So it was a crazy year, and I'm definitely not going to try and claim that every single day was as magical and powerful as day 3 of the project, but it was a very interesting time. What was really fascinating, by the way, in doing this is that not everybody responded to the thank you cards the way that you would expect. And it's funny, I always remember the story of writing the letter to my wife, and that was always a memorable one for me because it was actually the hardest letter that I had to write. Not because I don't love my wife. I love my wife very much. All right. So here's a little family picture. I love my wife. We've been together for almost 9 years married. We've been together for about 14 years. And this is my wife, Monica. This is our children. We have Anderson on the bottom and Roan. And we have a 11-month-old Holiday baby girl right now. So she's not pictured. This is back when we went to the Grand Tetons in Wyoming. So it was really hard for me to write the letter to my wife. And I'll tell you why. Not because I don't love her, but because it's so easy. Like, it's so easy with our spouses or people who know us the closest to, number one, take for granted all that they do. But 2 is like they know our weaknesses, right? Like it's almost like sometimes it's hard to, we have our guards up a little bit because we don't want to get hurt. And it was 2 months into the project, and I had written all these letters to all these people. And I kind of realized, like, okay, your wife's got to be thinking, like, excuse me, how long have we been married for, right? And I haven't gotten a single letter yet. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna time block it, right? I'm gonna put an hour in my schedule, and I'm gonna write the world's greatest love letter to my wife. And so I wake up early one morning, and I start to work on it. And she doesn't get like a card. She gets a sheet of paper, like full page, front and back, single space. Like, it is a work of art. And I go to town on this thing. And I finished the letter, and I wanted to make sure she got it. So I put it where I knew she would find it, which was by her coffee. Now, you need to understand, we have a coffee routine in our family. We're big coffee drinkers. So I wake up early. I make a French press of coffee. I pour a cup for myself, and I drink it, and I pour a cup for her in a thermos that she can drink when she wakes up. So I leave it right next to her coffee, and I am out seeing clients for the day, and I'm just like feeling like the greatest husband in the world, right? Like, oh my gosh, she's going to love that letter. And every 5 minutes, I'm checking my phone. I'm like, she get it? Nope. How about now? Nope. And I keep checking my phone, and you guys know what happened? Nothing. Nothing happened. She didn't even tell me that she saw it. And I'm thinking, come on, right? Like, I pour my heart out, like, nothing, crickets, that's what I get. Well, what you need to know also about that time in our life is I had to have a little compassion because we had just landed in Texas. We didn't even have furniture in our house yet. At that moment, we had a 2-week-old baby, and we had a 2.5-year-old at home. So life was pretty chaotic. We also only had one car because we left one car in California, drove one car out. So it was like we were like really scraping by at that point. So I said, hey, you know what? I'm just going to let this go. As a spouse, sometimes you just do that, right? And so I just left it alone. A funny thing happened the next day, though. So I woke up to make some coffee. And as I opened the cupboard, I realized we had run out of coffee, which wasn't a huge deal for me because I have the car and I was just going to go see my clients for the day. I was like, oh, I'll just pick up some coffee on my way to see my first customer of the day. So I'm leaving the house, and as I'm kind of tiptoeing out, I hear my wife walking down the stairs, and I look up, and you can just tell she is dead tired. 2-week-old baby on one arm, 2.5-year-old clung to her other leg, and she just looks at me dead tired and says, oh, before you go, is the coffee ready? Yeah, about that, we actually ran out of coffee. And you could slowly see the information sinking into her brain, and it was kind of like this, oh, okay, we don't have coffee. I'll just go to Starbucks and get some coffee. Oh, wait, I can't do that because you have the car. You're going to be gone all day. I've slept like 2 hours tonight. And she just stops and looks at me and says, have a nice day. Which, if you've ever been married or in a serious relationship and somebody says, have a nice day like that, they don't actually mean to have a nice day. And so I leave my house and I feel like the worst husband in the world, right? And I go to the Starbucks drive-thru like a selfish jerk, and I'm sitting there. And the thing is, I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to get a cup of coffee and bring it back home, but this is like downtown Dallas. We got super terrible traffic. If I was 15 minutes later, I would be in the worst traffic. I'd be late to see my client. I just didn't want that to happen. So like I wanted to do the right thing, but I just couldn't. And then I'm sitting in line and I just say to myself, how can you do that? You know, like how can you, on the one hand, give this woman a letter expressing your undying love, and then over here leave her completely hanging? So I pull up to the window and I say, make it 2. He makes me a second cup of coffee. I drive backwards home, leave it on the doorstep, and I leave a little card. This is a picture of that card. And all it says is, Monica, thank you for working hard to take care of our boys. You are always worth a hot cup of coffee. I drive down the street. I send her a text. I say, come outside. She comes outside. She sees it. She takes a picture of it. She posts it on Instagram. She's like, oh my gosh, I get the best husband in the world. And she's sending me kissy faces. Oh my gosh, I can't wait till you're home tonight. You're the best husband ever. And then I'm in my car now in bumper to bumper traffic. And I'm thinking like, wait a minute. Yesterday, I just gave you the world's greatest love letter and I get nothing. And then today, I give you 2 sentences and a cup of coffee. And that's what did it for you. And you know what I said? I'll take it, right? I'll take any win I can get as a husband, right? Fun fact, my client wound up being late and you know, it all worked out, and I come home and I talked to my wife, and this was the lesson, and this is about where we're gonna wrap here. I was talking to my wife and she says, you know what, John, I got your letter yesterday and I know you love me, but sometimes I just like when you prove it to me. That was a lesson I needed to learn that day. You see, if we want to activate loyalty in our lives, in our business, in our relationship, all people are looking for is for you to prove it to them. Prove what? Prove that you've got their back. Prove that you're out for their best interest, not just your own. I mean, this is the nature of tribal relationships. Why was that one of the first, how do we keep finding ourselves in different tribes and communities? Because we value something about being in a relationship, that we're better by being in this relationship. And sometimes, and it doesn't matter if it's a customer, if it's your spouse, all people need is for you to prove it. That's how you activate loyalty. And this is the question that I learned to ask myself after this event, this experience that changed my life and changed my business. And I'm going to share that with you, which is that the question is, how do you treat that for which you were grateful? Because you don't get to say, I love you, and then treat someone like crap and not expect an impact. You don't get to tell your clients, we're all about customer service, but be pretty wonky on your follow-up or your returning phone calls, or only put them in your email drips after you close their $800,000 home, right? If we want to activate loyalty, we need to think about, how do I treat things that I really care about? And when you ask that question, you'll notice all of this slew of things that you can do. I started asking this question about our business, and I thought, man, you know, there are so many things that we need to change just to show our appreciation, our respect, and our gratitude for our customers. We need to change our process and how we like onboard customers and get them all set up with what we do for them. And it just changed everything. And this is what I want to leave you with, is that if you want to activate loyalty, you want to build a better business, it's not too difficult. Take the time to be curious. Remember that vow framework. Remember the simplicity of just being able to wonder, what is it that this person cares about? How does this person win in life? And what are their weaknesses, or how can I support them during an area of pain? And to not just know those things, but to do something about it with that knowledge. And that's where you can create amazing connections that activate loyalty, and also multiply your impact with the relationship that you have in the business that you create. So I'm going to end myself there.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Let's give John a huge round of applause, and hang tight. I'm going to show you real quick how you're going to get copies of John's book. So I love this guy. I've got 100 copies that I want to give away. Here's how it's going to work. Cutco, obviously we are the #1 way to appreciate your clients, a vehicle to do so. So everyone pull out your phone really quick. And the way our program works, we ship you a supply of gifts to have on hand so you don't have to think about where do I do, what do I get, and where do I go. It's real simple, have them on hand, tax deductible, all engraved with your info. I want to buy you a Cutco knife because there's only one thing better than Cutco, and that is free Cutco. So I can see your mouths moving. I'm going to buy you a Cutco knife if you just sit down with a short Zoom consultation. So I'll send you a knife for free. All you're going to have to do is text me right now. I'll text you some times to get together. When you place a gift order, I'm going to buy you not one, not two, not three, not four, but when you place a gift order for gifts that you're going to buy anyway for your clients to appreciate them, I'm going to include 5 copies of John's book. I'm such a big believer in this message and what you've heard today that I want to spread this level of gratitude out to the entire world. So here's how it works. I'm going to give you my phone number. You just have to text me with your name and your email and the word sharp. I will send you a text back with some times to get together. There's no obligation to buy. I'm going to buy you a free Cutco knife just for meeting. That is a true story. And if you order, I'm going to buy you 5 copies of John's book. So the number is, you ready? Text me, 858-255-1142. Again, it's 858-255-1142. I'm putting it in the chat. Text me your name. Oh man, one of you is already calling me. Don't call me. My phone is gonna blow up right now, which is great. I'll get back to you in a minute or two. Yeah, it's already going off. So thank you. Text me your name and your email, 858-255-1142. I'll buy you a knife just for meeting. I'll buy you 5 extra copies of John's book when you place your gift order. Happy to go over all the details with you. Thank you. My phone is vibrating off the hook right now. But I just really appreciate just the opportunity to be here with all you today. I mean, Coldwell Banker West is a special place in my heart on behalf of all of Sharp Retention. You know, when John reached out to me and he said, hey man, pick your 1 or 2 favorite brokerages, this was the first one to come to mind. Peter was the first message that I sent. And I just really love the organization that all of you have built, the continued growth that I experience every time I'm at one of your meetings. So it's really just an honor to be able to work with y'all, whether you're in San Diego or in Riverside or wherever you are. I'm happy to connect with you, answer questions anytime. Find me and John on social media. We're a great follow. And I think that's all I got. So I'll turn it back over to Corey again. Thank you all for already texting me. Give me a moment and I will get back to you with some times to get you some free Cutco and some books. Yeah. And have a super sharp rest of your day. And if anyone has any Q&A, I believe we'll have some time. That's up to John, but I think we're out on. Thank you for all your time. I want to respect everyone's time.
Yeah, thanks.
Eric, I want to say thank you for bringing John to us. We're very blessed to have heard the message. And John, there were just so many thank yous in the chat and people touched by the power of your message. So we learned a lot. I know I took pages worth of notes from your talk and the advice you gave us today. So thank you. You impacted our lives in a very positive way, and we appreciate you.
Thank
Everybody
you.
on the call, to all our Coldwell Banker friends across California and across the country. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Lance, for being here. Everybody have a beautiful weekend, and we will talk with you soon.
Cool. And then, thank you, Corey.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. It was really good. Enjoyed it.
Awesome.
God bless.
Hey guys, we're gonna open and create for some Q&A, so some of you guys have some questions. So one quick thing, I do want to make sure you guys have a chance to be able to get a hold of me in case you want to get our email updates or anything like that. So texting is always the simplest thing. So we set it up where you can just like text in and just put your email afterwards, and then we'll keep you on our email list. Also, I do love to get feedback from our events, so I always like to give a survey out. So if you don't mind taking like 30 seconds to fill out the survey, we'll text that back to you. But we won't communicate beyond that via cell phone. But would love to do that. So I'm gonna so if you have your phones out, because you all just texted Eric, which is awesome. If you could text the word Mr. Thank You, no spaces, just MR Thank You, caps doesn't matter, to 66866, 66866. Just send a text over to that. and then we'll go ahead and add you to our email list, and then I'll send you the survey to fill out. We'd love to get some feedback. Our goal and mission with this, with the Mr. Thank You Project since COVID-19 is to deliver this keynote 100 times this year to organizations all over the country and the world. So we've done Canada, US, real estate, spoken at churches, spoken at high school. We did all sorts of cool things. So on the survey, if you have any events that you feel this would be a relevant message for, you're welcome to just kind of drop that in a comment, and then we'll follow up with you on that. But that's it. So Eric, do you want to go ahead and take care of Q&A here? Or do you want to just allow to, however you want to?
Yeah, I'll moderate. We've got a lot of people still on here. Again, shout out to Coal Bank of West having one of the biggest Zooms I think I've ever been a part of. But does anyone, you can kind of unmute yourself and see if you have any specific questions. If we get too many at one time, we'll try and get a little queue going here.
Yeah. You're also welcome to do it in the, I think they're in just the chat if you want to drop it.
Yeah, and I'll read it. I'll keep an eye on the chat. I'll ask a question while we wait for a few people to come in. So John, I've been a big fan of yours, obviously, for a while. I actually made a commitment. So when you said the $1,000 thing, when we talked to Keller Williams, I've been writing 3 thank you notes a day, Monday through Friday, every day for the last year. When you said the $1,000 thing last time, there's certain people who act or say they're going to do things. And then there's certain people who actually put their money where their mouth is. So I've got my $1,000 here. If I miss a day of getting up, I actually did it for my accountability group, which my thank you cards fall into that. So, but what do you do? There's another question coming in, but I'm going to ask this one first real quick. What do you do? How did you find yourself getting around? Look, I know it's 8:30 p.m. or 10:30 p.m. and you haven't written a card yet for the day. How did you kind of get through that hump of, I've gone through it, like, oh, shoot, like, I'm tired. It's been a long day. Kids are screaming. Yeah. I still got 4 thank you cards to write. What do you do?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because ultimately what happens is, like, how do you write thank you cards when you don't want to? Well, here's the thing. When you make anything a habit long enough, like it starts to ingrain in your brain. So a crazy story about that was it was about 4 or 5 months into the project. So I was pretty heavy into it, and we'd sent out about 500 or about 900 thank you cards for the year. And it was about 8:30 at night. I come home from the day, just really worked super hard, and I was dead tired. I lay on the couch, I put on some Netflix, and I'm like, all right, I haven't written my cards yet today. I'm just gonna, watch a little Netflix show, then I'm gonna get up and do it. And I fall asleep like before the show starts. Like, I was that tired, and I was just deep sleep, REM dream state. And in my dream, my wife comes to me and shakes me and says, John, wake up, you have to write your cards. And I wake up. My wife is nowhere to be found. She's not around at all. She is up in bed sleeping. I pick up my phone and it says 11:59 p.m. Like, that's how crazy this got. And by the way, just to note, the cards didn't have to be done before midnight. They just had to be done before I went to bed. So that was just kind of an interesting thing when you make it a habit. So I tried to, as much as possible, write them early in the day so I didn't have to get stuck at the end like, oh crap, I got to do this. But it was definitely really good accountability. So honestly, just having the $1,000 at stake, there's no way I wasn't going to do it. It's 5 cards. You can do it in 5 minutes, or you could spend like an hour and a half, or 2 hours, or 3 hours. The average day, it took me an hour and a half to write all my cards. Because as you can tell, when you hear them, I wasn't just writing like, oh, hey, thanks for the thing you did. It was really, I try to be really thoughtful and just think about the relationship and the person and go through that vow framework and really address some of those things in the card. So that's kind of what went into it.
Love it. Good.
So the question I see in the chat box is, do you always write your notes on your business stationery? So great question. I don't. I just happened to, at the time, do that. And we make Mr. Thank You stationery now. We didn't make it back then. So if you want to pick some of those up, let me know. But what was cool about the writing the cards is, you just get to see all sorts of the stationery world. I actually got to speak at the National Stationery Show, which is like a real thing. And so I usually just use different, I go to Amazon and I buy something, or Target. So I have some that I just wrote on any piece of paper that I could find. Let me see if I can find this one. Oh shoot. Put myself on the spot. There.
You look for that. I would say too, just to add a note, but you're kind of following John's journey. I've written some thank you notes on really interesting places, and I think he's pulling one off here, and it makes it more authentic. So you don't overthink, oh, I need the stationery. Don't make that a reason or an excuse that you can't write the note. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I was actually in Austin, Texas at a conference, and I was staying in this hotel, and being a father of at the time 2 children, it was very nice to be in a quiet room all alone. My wife was back home with the kids, so it was like really nice to be in a quiet room. And so I just felt like, and the room was really clean, and I thought, well, yeah, I'm gonna write a thank you note to the staff that's cleaning my room. And so I just literally, I grabbed a sheet of paper off the little tab, and I just wrote like, thank you so much for making this room up. I'm a busy father who is finally able to get away for a couple of days, and coming to this room and not having to think about anything is really great. So thank you for all the time and attention you're putting into making my bed and cleaning everything up. Just want to say thank you so much. And I wrote that letter, I left it on the bedspread, and then I come back to a letter from the housekeeping, and it says, thank you very much. We hope your visit is pleasant, Susie and Lydia. And I thought what's so interesting about that was just taking the time to do that. I wonder what their thought process was making the room, right? Like knowing that someone took the time to acknowledge and appreciate that. Like that's the thing with, especially for those of you who have teams and staff, right? That's where the value of acknowledgement and appreciation comes in, because people are willing to work harder when they feel valued in what they do. And because it matters more, they see that you're paying attention to it. Because if we don't notice it, then they're like, well, I guess it's not really that important, right? And they start to devalue the work that they do. But when we take the time to acknowledge it, it makes a big difference. So yeah, so you can write them on anything, but I do use my own personal stationery once in a while.
Okay. So these other ones coming through the chat. What do you think of including a business card with your Mr. Thank You cards?
Yeah,
and
that's fine.
I have an add-on to that too when you're done, because I got someone special on this call has a special card that they put out before, so I want to share that with everyone.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think that putting your business card in there is totally fine. The one thing you just want to be aware of is the content inside of it, right? Because if it's very like, hey, if you ever need to buy or sell a home, let me know. It's kind of like, all right, well, that's a piece of marketing, right? That's not actually a thank you card. That's not and there's a distinction to share. There's a difference between acknowledgement and recognition. Acknowledgement and recognition. Recognition is saying thank you for what you did. Acknowledgement is saying thank you for who you are. And the subtle distinction there is massively different in the impact it has on somebody. So if you notice a lot of the cards that I would write, there was some essence of like, yes, thank you for the things you did. And there's almost this essence, and I use this a lot in my cards now at the end of whenever I'm writing something, and I say, and the world is better because you're here. And that statement, or having people get present to you like, wow, like I did it. I matter who I am. The world is better because I'm here. That speaks so much louder to people when you're writing them an acknowledgement versus just recognizing. And that goes especially with if you're a broker owner and you're recognizing your team or just giving away trophies. Like it's why I've been at so many conferences and just being like, all right, here's a top producer award, here you go. But to like pause. And I love when I see the leader just like take a moment to like acknowledge and really just state like, man, this agent, I remember when like they started the year and they were only at like, they were 50% off of their goal and like all the things that happened, and then their number one person quit. And then but they wouldn't let that stop them. And they worked through that, and they deserve this award more than anybody. So welcome this person to the stage, right? Like notice the difference of how that person, like they might actually keep that plaque versus 90% of the plaques that you get that you probably throw away. No offense to anyone who gives out plaques. I think we all know what I'm talking about here, right? So, and this is what people really want. They actually want they want acknowledgement, not just recognition. All right, next question here.
Before we go on, I wanted to point out if you want to add in a card that's kind of neutral. So Mary Beth Kelly, who is on the top left, what I call the #1 spot in my screen, she sent me one of these. They're called Tiny Love cards. And they're amazing. This one says, you're a good one. I'm thankful. I'm a thankful one. You're brilliant. Smile. Know what's great about you. Everything. So they're just really awesome. And I've had a great response with those. So those are cool. There. Or a sticker, there you go. Best day of my life. And you say, this reminds me of the first day that we met. So you can get these at bestdayofmylife.com. Side plug, if you do put in the code Eric G, 50% of the money goes to my nonprofit. We built a medical clinic in Haiti, actually with Monica, John's wife. So Eric G at the bestdayofmylife.com. Little shameless plug there.
Someone asked. So yeah, if you want to get on our email list, just text the word Mr. Thank You to the number 66866. All right. So Okay, next question. Do you keep record of your notes? Oh, this is so great. You guys are going to love this. This is like this, because after doing this project, so number one, I use an Excel spreadsheet, right? Just super nerdy. Because the thing is, when you write 1,800 cards in here, you forget. You're like, wait, did I write them a card? I know I thought about writing them a card. Did I actually do it? And you can totally forget. So this actually became the precipice for how this became a global movement. So I started speaking about 2 years ago on this topic, and I had several people reach out and say, hey, since I met you, I've written 500 thank you cards, or I've written one a day for 6 months. And I hear all these great stories. And I remember someone saying, you know, John, you should keep track of all these cards that you're inspiring. So we actually built a website, and I'll show you guys real quick what this is. So it's mrthankyou.com. So mrthankyou.com. And if you go here, so our mission now with Mr. Thank You is to inspire 74 million thank you cards written around the world. That's effectively 1% of the world's population, 7.4 billion people on the planet. So we want to inspire 74 million thank you cards. So we built a tracker that anyone around the world can use. So if you go to mrthankyou.com, so right now the cards are sitting at 10,352. These are all actual Mr. or Mrs. Thank Yous around the world. So you can sign up for free. And all you do is you sign up and you put in like your name, your email, and your postal code, your state, and you create a password. So this way we know roughly around the world where you are. And then I'll show you what happens is that once you log in, so I'll go back for a second here. What's cool is that you get your own gratitude portal, which you can, there you go, still use the good old Cutco John email. All right. And so what you get is when you enter a card for somebody, so we actually do this thing called the detailed entry. So you can actually just write like, hey, I wrote 10 cards and type that in, then it gives you your own number to track. Or if you actually put the name, so like Eric Gilman, so I could put Eric, and then I could put today. Now I'm going to be like, I'm accountable here. I got to write Eric a thank you card. Eric, what's your zip code?
92111.
92111. So what happens is you put the person's name, and you can fit up to 5 at a time. You click submit. And then what happens is, number one, that goes to your gratitude number. It goes to our global number. And then actually at the bottom, we give you your own global gratitude map. So it shows where all of your cards are going around the world if you put the zip code of the person. And then on top of that, we give you a timestamp of when you wrote the card to any specific person. So this was actually built because for me, this is what I needed. So if you want to start your own gratitude project, check it out, go there for free, create a free account. And then you can start logging your thank you cards. And it's a really cool thing because you start to see how much you're impacting the world with your own gratitude. So yeah, thanks for asking about that. Gave me an opportunity to give a shameless plug. Appreciate that. Okay, how much did we tip the waitress? That's a great question. I honestly don't remember that because I think we all had separate tips that we put in. So I don't know what everyone did in total. Okay, what other questions? What other questions? You can also ask a live question. Anything else?
Hey, John, I got a quick question. I've been trying to text you, and did you say it's 66866 Mr. Thank You, or?
So just type in 66866. That's the number to text, and then in the body, like when you send the message, send the word Mr. Thank You.
Gotcha. It's coming back. I did that, and it's coming back not recognized. But anyway.
Well, that.
Try it again.
Try it again, and if it's not, then I'll email something out to Peter to give out to everybody, so you guys can drop your email on that later. If it's not working, I'll check it out. But thanks for letting me know. Appreciate that. Okay. What else? What other questions?
Hey, John, I have a question.
Yeah.
Hey, so that wall behind you, I want to know what's going on with that.
Oh, sure. Thanks. So this is my gratitude wall. So you can see it extends
Wow.
the entire wall. And so this is my office. So this is Mr. Thank You headquarters. And so when you write 1,825 thank you cards in a year, and you speak about writing thank you cards and gratitude to people all over the country, you do tend to get some thank you cards back. So every time I get a letter, I read it and then I put it on my wall. So when I come into my office, it kind of reminds me of the work that we're doing and why it matters and why it's important. And, and here's what I'll tell you, like, this is, the real reason why I do what I do is because at the end, I didn't have time. So a lot of times when I'm doing a keynote, I'll usually take about 75 minutes to do the full thing. And there's a couple stories we skipped out today, but that's okay. You can actually find my TED Talk, by the way, on YouTube. So if you just look up Mr. Thank You Project, you should see the TED Talk as the first thing. but I often will encourage people at the end of our talk to write a letter to somebody that they really care about. Right? Like at this point, like, how many of you have thought of at least one person in your life that you need to write a letter to, right? Or who deserves to receive some acknowledgement and appreciation. Well, I invite people to do that at the end of my keynotes while they're there physically in the audience. And the stories that we hear back from them are shocking, right? Like someone said, I've never written a letter to my wife ever. And I did it today in this training or in this seminar. I had someone, I was speaking at a national mortgage conference in Arizona, and I had a guy come up to me, like a big burly dude, like in tears. And he was like, I wrote a letter to my son who's 12 years old, and my ex-wife hasn't let me see him for 7 years. And one day I'm going to get to give him this letter. And, when I look at like, why do we do this work? There's a really great book out there it's called On Death and Dying. And this woman talks about like the common, I think it's the 4 or 5 common regrets of the dying. And one of the things that she speaks about is that common regrets are people that they didn't forgive, or people they wish they stayed in touch with, and people they wish they would have said, I love you too more. And when people ask me and they say, hey, John, like, what did you get out of this? Like, if you can distill it down to like, of all the great things that happened, like, what can you say is like, what's your biggest takeaway? I got to do that. Like everybody that I truly feel I have a relationship with, that I love and value, I got to tell them. I got to tell them why. And there's a whole part of the project. So if you guys get a copy of the book, so whether you buy a bunch of knives from Eric or you get it on Amazon. So in the book, there's a lot more stories of the projects you can find on Amazon, but there's actually a chapter in here called, it's called Peace Cards. And this is actually where it wasn't about me writing thank you cards. It was about me writing apologies to people that I had hurt in my life. And if I can look at the most transformational piece of this project, it was being able to go back to all the people that I had hurt in my life and be able to acknowledge it. Some of them I got to write a letter to. Some of them probably would not have given me their mailing address. So I did send them a Facebook message or an email, however I could reach out to them. But it changed my life. And it just really shifted my perspective of myself, being willing to separate ego from what really mattered, which is relationship. And that was pretty life-changing. So that's like the purpose and the value of what we do. Is it's not, I don't need more. I mean, I love getting thank you cards. If you ever want to send one, our email, our mailing address is on our website, so you're welcome to do that. But that's why we do it. We do it so people get the opportunity to express what they really feel to who they care about, so that they can move forward life with more joy, happiness, and peace. That's why we do it. So that was totally an extended answer to your question, Ashley, of what's behind me. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, it was an awesome answer. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I know some of you guys got to go, but if I'll stick around I've got some time here. So I've got about 11 more minutes. If you got to go for it. If you have more questions, you're welcome to stick around and ask. What, if any, additional questions do you have?
It's just been great, man. I mean, well,
and if we're done, then we're good.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of, and everyone has anything. We got another 30 seconds here, but just really, I mean, on behalf of everybody, John, and I'm getting overwhelming positive reviews in the chat and via text message as well. So I'm super grateful to know you, man. And, Cutco's been lucky to have a legend like you, selling knives and changing lives as we do. And we really appreciate, you using that vehicle to appreciate people, but really just taking not just the initiative to do but to go above and beyond and spread the message out there. It looks like we got one more question. What can we do for someone who is not appreciative of anyone other than themselves? Ooh, fun person.
See, this is where it gets deep, by the way, right? So thank you, Eric. And again, if anyone needs to jump off, you're welcome to, but I have a couple of responses to this question. So what can you do for someone who is not appreciative of anyone other than their self? It's an interesting question. I'm not a psychologist, so if someone has we all have levels of narcissism, and some people have higher than others. The thing that I find interesting is everybody does something for a reason, right? So, we have a small child, and for any of you who have kids or have been around a kid, the kids cry. And they typically cry for one of three reasons, right? They're hungry, they want someone to change their diaper, or they're tired. Those are basically the three things that most babies cry. And so what do we do when we hear a baby cry? If you're a parent, you've done this long enough, you're like, oh gosh, we haven't fed him in so like XYZ number of hours, we need to feed him. Or, oh gosh, he's so tired, hasn't had a nap in 8 hours, we should, get him in the car and drive him around, whatever. We know to respond based on the need. And so what I would say is that we still do that as we get older, but it just looks different. Meaning that there's parts of us that actually are kind of like crying out, but we just don't know how to control it or do it in a certain way. And it might look like selfishness, it might look like any number of things. But what I can tell you is that the interesting fact about writing all these letters is, this is kind of an interesting stat, by the way. I'm curious if you guys want to jot what you think the answer is in the chat box. Out of writing 1,825 letters, what % of people do you think responded back from their letter? Drop it in the comments. What do you think? What % of people responded? I see 10, 25, 75%, 5%. So the answer, we got 50, 45, 1%, 70, 15. The answer is 10.
Wow.
But think about that. Out of 1,800 cards, 180 people said something back. So it actually became this interesting experience of writing all these letters and not hearing from most people and being like, did I do something wrong? Did they not like me or anything like that? And here's a crazy thing. I wrote a letter to everybody in my family, right? So I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I wrote them to every sibling, every spouse of a sibling, my mom, my dad, grandparents, aunts, uncles. And of everybody in my family who got a card, what % of them do you think responded back? That
0.
1.
A 1.
My sister who lives in Texas that I happened to see like that weekend, she shot me a text and said, hey, thanks so much for the card. That was so sweet. Nobody else in my family said anything. Crazy. I'm like, come on, guys, like, give me a break. And so here's the thing. I came home to San Diego to visit my mom and dad. So at the time, my dad was very far along in Parkinson's disease. So he had actually been diagnosed with Parkinson's when I was in high school. He was very far along. My mom took care of him like 100%, like took him to the bathroom, fed him food, brushed his teeth, like she basically did everything with and for him. And so I was going out to visit to kind of check on him and see how they were doing. And my mom was just a mess. Like she really was having a hard time. And we had like a sit down, like mother-son conversation. And she just broke down crying. And she said, I got your letter and I so much wanted to appreciate it, but I couldn't muster any gratitude because I am in so much pain right now.
Wow.
Taking care of your dad all by myself is ruthless. Like I can't keep doing this. And it was for the first time in probably a really long time that I just sat there and I listened to my mom. And I just heard everything that she had to say, everything she was going through. And I was like, I knew it was hard, but I didn't think I got like the severity of it. And so out of that conversation, I said, how can we help? What can we do? And she said, the youngest of 5 kids, she's like, it'd be great if every one of you came down to San Diego and visited and just took care of your dad for a full week, right? That would give me a week to leave, go on a trip or a vacation, or just be home, but not have to take care of him. And I can do whatever I want. And that would be huge if you guys could do that. And I said, done. We'll figure it out. I don't even know how. I mean, like some of us, aren't making as much money as others. Leaving a week out of work isn't going to be easy, but we're going to find it out. We're going to find a way. So we literally did family conference call, got all the kids online. We all planned out the weeks that we were going to come and see my dad and take care of him. And I took care of him in the middle of July. And my youngest sister saw him in the middle of August. She was the last one of the kids to see him. And then he passed away that weekend. That probably wouldn't have happened if that conversation with my mom hadn't happened. Notice also how much I do not care at this point that my mom said anything or not. I just started to realize that everybody does something for a reason, right? And there's usually something behind it. They might not tell you, And that's okay. They don't need to. And I think that was one of the big things that I took from this year is that the act of generosity and gratitude is it's the giving of a gift, right? If you're being grateful, you're giving a gift, right? Feeling gratitude is experiencing the gift. Giving gratitude is giving a gift. Well, a gift, if it's really done authentically, is given without expected anything in return, generously, with no strings attached. That is the nature of a gift. But if I'm writing a letter to somebody and I'm like, oh, did you get it? Did you hear? Did you like it? Then it's not about the person, it's about me. And so a huge part of this project was really separating my ego from really just truly acknowledging and appreciating people and letting them be as they are. And so I think that was just, I think at this point with anybody like that, and you can choose to write them a letter or not, is just have compassion. Like, they didn't respond. I have no idea why. I'm not going to make this about me. I'm just, I might reach out, I just see how they're doing, but I'm not going to make this about me. And that was a huge lesson that, gave all of the kids in my family an opportunity to get to spend a week with my dad. And we're really grateful for that.
Beautiful.
It's probably
Hey,
good.
so I'm going to have to, very nice. I have to go. I've got a 10 o'clock, but I'm going to leave it. Obviously everyone can stay on here, but thank you, John. Thank you everyone who texted me. I think I got 100 text messages all together from everyone. So thank you. And looking forward to getting in touch with anybody. My number's in the chat, of course, and we'll have a super sharp rest of your day, everybody.
Cool. Thanks for everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and cap it on that story. I think it's probably a good one for us to end on. So thank you for much for everything. Again, if you want to get in touch with me, make sure you shoot us a text. I'll just give you my email in the chat box too if you want for any follow-up communication. John at mrthankyou.com. And I'll send a note out to Peter to blast out to everybody to say like, hey, here's John's contact info if you need to get in touch for anything. But that's it, I really hope you guys didn't just get to hear a really great thing. Like I said, this isn't about glorifying John Israel saying, hey, look at me. This is about, hey, what can you hear from this that you can apply in your life today, in your business, in your life? Try it out. I think you'll be pleased. Have a great day,
Thanks so much, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, John.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.